Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Universal Basic Podcast. I am Dr. Cindy Banyai, and I am the founder of Big Mouth Media. And I am here with the host of Universal Basic Podcast, Chris Proia. Hey, Chris.
How you doing, Cindy?
Good, good. Living the dream every day, just as us working class folks do.
Yep. Working hard.
Every day.
That's for
Good.
sure.
So awesome. I know we've been talking about this and trying to get this podcast off the ground. And so I'm so excited that we're starting it here today. And I want everybody to know about you because you have done some amazing things in the last few years and you're hilarious, among other things. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Chris.
I've been a working class blue collar guy all my life. A lot of labor jobs. I ended up getting my Class A CDL through working at a big soda company.
So you're like,
And
you've been like a truck driver, right?
yeah, I drive truck. Right now I'm actually driving for a landscaping crew that we go to like big fancy houses or like big condos and install new plants. When they're done building it, we go and install the plant. For the last 3 years, I've actually been doing stand-up comedy. So that's been fun. And you know the story about how I got into politics, but I met you at one of the Democratic going outs and whatnot. And I've
That's
always been a
great.
troll on the internet. When Facebook started blowing up, I was actually over the road. I was driving a truck over the road for a year, and I would always get into arguments on Facebook and whatnot, and just point, counterpoint, how to debate, blah, 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 blah. And I've taken an interest in politics through that. And I've realized that I went from basically growing up as a conservative Catholic right winger. I didn't really know what any of that really meant, to be honest with you.
Mm.
And from debating points and counterpoints on Facebook, I ended up being a super progressive liberal. And I
It's
met
amazing
you
how
at
that
the
happens to folks, right? People
yeah,
get a little bit of information. They're like, wait a minute, this isn't what I was thinking it was. And then you realize, oh, yeah, maybe I am actually a liberal and progressive.
yeah. I didn't really change one. What am I trying to think of? I didn't
Your
really change
thought, your
one
position.
thought or position. There we go, position of how I felt about the way the world should work. And I ended up going from a conservative Catholic Christian to a super progressive liberal. And
Yeah.
really
And I
the
think
only thing that yeah, the only thing that I do, I'm more of an atheist now than anything else, but that's about the only position I changed on.
yeah. I think a lot of people are like that though too. Especially working class folks, right? Like we are trying to make ends meet, trying to take care of our family and our kids, pay the rent, keep the lights on. And there
And
are these folks who are telling us, oh, you should believe this and you should believe that. And you are a conservative, or even when you are a Democrat, right? And I think a lot of folks, they just don't always take that time to think about the positions, the
right.
issue, and what it really means to them and what it means to vote for people based on those positions.
Yeah, because when conservatives push their ideals upon people that are unaware, it sounds good. It sounds great. It sounds like, hey, I don't want to pay that much money out of my wallet and I don't want the government controlling my businesses and all that. But what people fail to realize is that just like this train accident, the Trump administration rolled back all
The
the
regulations.
thank you regulations. It's late at night and I've been drinking a little, so we're gonna get through this.
It's good. It's
But
good.
yeah, the Trump administration rolled back the regulations on the trains, and now we have an accident, and now all of a sudden Republicans are like, "Oh, it's all the Democrats' fault," but they
I
were
love
the
it. They're
ones that
like,
rolled back
"Oh
these
my god,
regulations.
I so care about the environment and the water." It's like the first time they've given a shit about anything like that.
Right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Got wackadoos like JD Vance and they're going, "Oh my gosh, look at this. He's putting a stick in the river and like pulling up stuff." And he's like, "This is terrible." And every environmental conservationist is going, "Yeah, no shit. This is what we've been telling you from the beginning, that these assholes are just riding around. They need regulation because here's the thing." And that I'm glad that you brought up the East Palestine thing too, because this is what's crazy is until people started to hear about it and push it, because it was pushed out of the media cycle, I think I only heard NPR talking about it a few days after it happened and really nobody else. And until there were people starting to apply pressure saying, hey, look, this is super bad. They decided to burn the vinyl chloride to prevent an
Right.
explosion. And it wasn't until there was all that pressure that the company was forced to be on the hook, because initially, here's what was wild, they were only going to give that town and the people that were affected $25,000 and
Wow.
retribution after they had been forcibly evicted from their homes. Basically, they had to evacuate the area. And now, of course, we people are starting to be concerned about the water pollution. People were reporting rashes and sore throats and things like that, which is very consistent with exposure to these toxic chemicals. And
Right.
now the EPA has actually told the company, by the way, the EPA was letting the company lead until there was this added scrutiny. But now the EPA said, look, you, Norfolk Southern, are going to have to take care of this. And if you don't, the EPA will do it and then charge you triple back for it for the effort. So,
Oh, nice.
yep, but it's a big deal. But if people didn't know, they're just going to listen to who's ever being blamed at the time. What you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. Pretty much we wrap that
Yeah,
up.
exactly. So that's a good example. So let me loop back to you though, because you just glossed over it. So yes, you got involved in politics. So you made the jump though from just fighting on Facebook
I did.
to what did you
Yeah,
jump
I
to?
made the
Tell us.
jump from being a troll on Facebook to actually running for Florida State Senate, which was fun. Yeah, and took a little vacation from politics because I got a little burnt out on it throughout that whole thing. But now I'm back. We're gonna do this podcast, and it's not gonna be like my idea for this podcast is not to make it like a newsy type podcast, even though this episode we're going to be talking about something that's in the news. My idea of this podcast is basically to cover one subject each time we do the podcast. And then in about a year, go back and redo that subject. And basically, if anybody has comments or emails us any comments or suggestions or whatever, we'll go through and we'll basically look at our position and see if we're actually making the right decision.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. And I know that you and I were talking about how this was going to go. And what you had told me at the time was that what was important to you is that we focus on these handful of issues, largely around finance and money, geared towards people who were like you that are listening, and working class folks who maybe don't have the time to read an entire book on economics. You
Right.
want the quick and dirty with them. What's in it for me? Why do I need to care about this thing?
Definitely. So yeah, we're going to be covering topics like universal basic income on one episode, universal healthcare on one we might even do some fun things like space or something like in the ocean, or it's just going to be one topic per episode. We're going to dive into it and see what we can do about that or just what's out there. And we'll visit it again in a year and see what people had to say about what we had to say about that subject, basically.
Awesome. Good.
Yeah.
So, no, I know we have something planned for this episode, which this is a little get to know you, but tell us, what's the topic for today?
So the topic for today is trendy and in the news right now. It is the debt ceiling. Congress does not want to raise, the Republican Congress does not want to raise the debt ceiling limit to let us pay off the bills on the money that we have already spent. And we have basically until June to figure this out, or else our nation, for the first time, will default on its debt. And that'll wreck the credit score. It'll make us look bad in the eyes of the other nations, which we need to limit because we've been doing a lot of that lately. And it's just not going to be a good thing for everybody.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel like that Biden should take a page out of Obama's book, and it seems like that's what he's doing. I think that he should just stare down the Republicans and tell them that we're going to raise the debt limit clean, and then we're going to work out where we're going to do spending cuts and new bill spending and all that on the budget, not the debt ceiling limit, where it belongs on the budget side of it, not the debt ceiling
Right.
side of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we know we learned earlier this year that especially the fiscally conservative, extreme fiscal conservatives in the Republican Party, like my former opponent Byron Donalds, and these other folks that were supported by Club for Growth, which is an extremely fiscally conservative super PAC and PAC that pays lots of money to candidates if they agree to not add any spending. Okay. So those folks
Right.
held McCarthy and his speakership over their knee, spanked him real hard, and told him that there will be cuts. And they, one of the things included the debt ceiling negotiations. They wanted to see, they do not want to pass the raise in the debt ceiling, lifting the debt ceiling until there are things that are cut. And you're absolutely right that that's not where it belongs. This is akin to paying your credit card bill.
And another dirty trick that they're actually doing is they're trying to wrap up really unpopular policies in these spending cuts and hiding it under the Democrat side, like cutting Medicare, cutting Social Security, cutting all these popular programs. They're trying to cut the spending there under this and say, oh, it's the Democrats' fault that we can't have these programs because they know that policies like that are just going to cost them votes. So if they can't come out and say we're going to cut these policies, they're going to put it under this and blame the
Right. And
Democrats for it.
that's what we
Yeah.
saw. Biden, aka Dark Brandon, during the State of the Union called out the Republicans saying, "Oh, you want to cut Social Security?" And they're all like, "Oh no!" And then he's, "I got your plan that says that you're going to cut Social Security." And then he basically made them admit in front of a national audience that they weren't going to do it. And even Rick Scott has backed down from his quote sunsetting of Social Security and Medicare. But I think that you're right. They're going to try to stick it in somewhere to blame it on the Democrats.
Definitely. Yeah. Even though we have the plan directly from our wonderful ex-governor, Rick Scott, you know,
Governor
saying that he
Skeletor.
wants to sunset everything. Yeah. Skeletor. It's true.
Sorry, I can't help myself with him.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So let's talk a little bit about like how we got to the debt ceiling because I think people there's so many of these economic terms that get thrown around and this one we rolled back on the debt ceiling is this was like an arbitrary limit. So actually Congress made a law that said okay this is the amount of debt that we will take on. So basically when we're paying and this is what they're paying for by the way is federal government programs. So we're talking about things like the FAA, the aviation, right, which we saw problems with earlier this year, paying for
Right.
all the staff of the State Department, the defense, the military, right, paying their salaries, paying the salaries of EPA, folks who are working on cleaning up East Palestine, right? It's paying their salaries. Those are the folks, the individual people that are going to be hurt if we don't raise the debt ceiling because we will not only just default on it, which is bad. We'll talk about why that's bad in a moment, but we're talking about the government shutting down too. So all these basic
Hmm.
services, many of which we take for granted for being there, won't be able to be paid unless that debt ceiling is raised. And like Chris already said, this was passed in the budget. This is ongoing. We already agreed that we were going to spend this money. But because of this law that was put in place several decades ago, we have to go through this procedure in Congress to raise it again. And it's just an arbitrary thing, and we just keep kicking it upwards.
Yeah, we keep kicking the can down the road trying to find this thing right here. I'm reading something off of CBS News right now that said, has the debt limit ever been raised before? And yes, many times. Since 1960, Congress has raised the debt ceiling 78 times, either temporarily or to temporarily extend or revise the definition of the debt limit.
Right.
They've done it 78 times since 1960. The debt limit was changed 49 times under Republican presidents and 29 times under Democratic presidents. So basically, this is like a everyday type of thing. But now, because the ultra MAGA politicians we have in the office right now, like I keep saying, they want to shoehorn in all these terrible policies
Right.
to hide it basically. Now all of a sudden it's a big deal why we can't raise the debt ceiling without any of these other things going on.
I mean, it's a political ploy essentially. Is
Yeah.
they want these cuts, and they are trying to use the battle for the debt ceiling to get the cuts in. So I
No.
know I was going to say, oh, sorry, you want to add something? Because I was going to move on to the last time we had this big battle.
Okay, we could do that. Yeah, I
All
was
right.
gonna bring up the coin thing too, but we could do that after this.
Ooh, okay, let's do mint the coin in a few minutes because that's my favorite answer. So the reason, okay, so back under Obama, as Chris was saying, was the last time that we had this big fight, and that was because again we had a Republican Congress and a Democratic president, and they want to use this to try and make, basically they're playing chicken to crash the economy to try to make a Democratic president look bad so that their presidential nominee can get in. That's the strategy, right? They did this back
Mm,
2012. All right. And what ended up happening in 2012 was, for the first time in American history, our credit rating was downgraded. Okay. Now, let me explain what that means, because people say that, but we don't necessarily know why that matters, right? The thing that's important to know about this is that one of the ways that Americans' money, our economy gets value, is because we have people investing in it. And so we sell government bonds, right? These government bonds are considered the safest investment in the world. We
right.
basically say, great, it's a financial tool, and people buy them. They get a certain percentage back, right? They are very stable and very reliable. And that's what's at risk right now. So in 2012, we were actually downgraded because of this chicken that the Republicans wanted to play. And it made our bonds, basically the way that people from around the world can invest in our country, they made it less desirable, because there was, for the first time in American history, doubt that we would pay our bills. And that's a big deal, because if people are not believing that investing in the American government and investing in the American people is a good bet, then we have much, much bigger problems than
Mm.
going to be president next term.
And when that happened, we didn't even hit the debt ceiling limit. We were just there. I believe we were a couple hours before we hit that limit when they decided to raise it, but we still lost that credit rating because, like you said, there was doubt. And
The market doesn't like doubt. The market doesn't like risk. And that's what's really fucked up. It is literally the Republicans saying, we're going to crash the economy to screw over the Democrat who's in office. And like, that should really worry everybody, because these folks don't care. These are millionaires, right? These are millionaires in Congress who are playing chicken with the economy. And what that means, it's all of our jobs, right? It's our jobs, and it's the way that we make a living for our family that's going to be at risk. We are going to pay the price for their political Russian roulette with the debt ceiling.
right, I'm trying to see. I can't remember exactly if the debt ceiling actually got raised under Trump. I believe it might have, but I can't remember. I'm trying to look. We'll skip that.
Cut that out.
This is what happens when you don't do these things all the way prepared.
Hey, we're good. Okay, so let's talk about the coin. Chris, introduce this idea, and we'll jump in, because I think this is really exciting.
Ah, the coin. Yes. What I believe this is, I haven't done a whole lot of research on this yet, but basically, the the Treasury Secretary, is allowed to mint a coin, like a $1 trillion platinum coin, one coin, what the government can use to pay all of its bills. And then I guess we go back to normal, which seems to happen. Let's see.
So let me provide some additional context to this, okay? Because this is based on modern monetary theory and very progressive economics, based on essentially like how the economy really works. And let me preface this also by saying that the United States has been in debt since before it was a country. Okay. So we've always been in debt started with France, right? Paying for the Revolutionary War. And we've never not been in debt. Okay. So let me just put that on the table there. But the
Right.
concept is this, that the United States is what's called a fiat currency. So our government makes money, right? It's created money, it's created a currency so that we can have economic growth. Economic growth allows us to trade goods and services. We are no longer tethered to the gold standard. So that means that our dollar, our currency, is based on its perceived value. The dollar is
Right.
very strong because our economy is robust. We have good infrastructure. We have diversity in everything from research and development to agriculture to manufacturing. We run the gambit. We have a strong economy. People trust in us. That's the credit rating, right? They invest in us. So we have external investments in our economy and in our growth, keeping also in mind that the federal government is the largest single employer in the country. Okay. We have a
Hmm.
vested interest in the entire workforce in our economy to keep the government running. Okay. So, because of that, we know, and we take on the debt. And we do that because although we have taxes, and taxes, people, the one of the biggest misconceptions is that taxes pay for the government services. That's not really true. Okay. What happens is taxes is our way to essentially pay a share into the system, right? And the modern monetary theory, taxes are here for us to basically to create for us to work, right? If we didn't have a reason to create something or to work to pay the taxes, like if we didn't have taxes to pay, if we didn't have houses to buy, if we didn't have food to buy, we wouldn't work, right? So it's an incentive to get everybody involved in the process. But that really ultimately, the accounting and the government is like shifting numbers from column to column, right? This is input,
Right.
this is output, this is expense, right? But ultimately, that makes us have a super awesome economy with a very high standard of living. Okay. So, because, like you said, the treasury can mint any denomination of coin and paper money it needs, right, to do its business, to do the business of the American government, that we could mint $1 trillion coin and pay the debt and just be done with the discussion. So we wouldn't have to worry about the debt ceiling. We wouldn't have to worry about all of those things that the Republicans are holding over the Democrats' head, because there would be no debt ceiling. We would just be back to zero. We would zero out the account. We could put the $1 trillion coin back in, because here's what it comes down to is like, we really don't rely solely on paper money or coin money. We don't rely on gold. Okay. It literally is how much we believe in this thing we call our economy, and how much the rest of the world believes that we will produce what we say we're going to produce, that we will continue to provide value. And the
Right.
most dangerous thing that we can do is erode that belief. So that's the primer into where the mint the coin idea came from, which had been, by the way, actually introduced into Congress as a solution to the debt ceiling by Rashida Tlaib, representative from Detroit. I think in the 116th Congress, she did that. But it's such a wild concept for people, because most people believe that the American government functions like a household budget, right? Where you get this money, you pay for this thing, you get this thing, right? But the fact of the matter is, most of our household budgets don't even work like that, right? People who are homeowners are living off of credit because they have a mortgage, right? They have a car
Right.
loan, they have a credit card, right? So most people are still living way beyond the input output of their everyday life, right? And if
Mhm.
you just think about that, the American government, the federal economy, or the federal government and the American economy operate on such a much larger scale than that. It's not input output. And that's the big thing that we got to get people to stop believing when it comes to the American economy, is it's so much more robust than that, and there's so many things that we can do to keep it going. And we, meaning the American people, really specifically meaning the Republicans and politicians, are the big threat to the American economy. Did I just blow your mind?
No, it makes a lot of sense because, like you said, the mortgage people get mortgages all the time, and they're basically living off of that. You know,
Mhm.
paying their house off a little bit at a time. So, what's
Yeah.
to stop? This is my question with the coin. What's to stop? Let's say Trump gets back in and mints 10 more coins to give to his buddies as souvenirs. What's to stop something like that from happening, other than the adults in the room?
And yeah, you would need the adults in the room. Again, it's and this is the other thing when talking about tea or minting the coin, right? It doesn't mean it's a free for all, right? It's not like Oprah Winfrey you get a coin and you get a coin and you get a coin, right?
Right.
It's like it's a tool, right? It's a tool that we have and that has consequences. And you can think about it right now because we actually see these fiscal and monetary tools being used all the time. People have probably heard about the interest rates going up, right? It's a
Hmm.
tool that the Fed has to manage the economy, right? Interest rates raise because they want spending to go down because the economy was moving too fast and inflation was high, right? And inflation is high because supply and demand is not pulling out, right? So you get inflation when you have more demand than you have supply, right? So the interest rate is there to try to make the demand go down. It's one of the tools in financial management at the federal level that we have. And so, yeah, if Trump, let's say that he had Stephen Mnuchin back in there, yeah, he could tell Stephen Mnuchin to mint 5 trillion coins, and then he could abscond off to, I don't know who would take him at this point, North Korea? I don't know. But at that point, it would have destroyed the economy. So they would be worthless because it's about trust. And as long as it looks like we're doing the right thing, we're producing what we say we're going to do, then everybody believes it. Think about this. And this was the turning point. Let me tell you, this is the turning point for me when I had basically believed in modern monetary theory throughout. I have a like the equivalent of a minor, an undergraduate in economics. Okay. And I had this moment where I realized that the entire global economy was based on perception. The economy works because we believe it works. It's you were talking about you went from Catholic to atheist, right? So there was a bit of a faith in there.
Right.
We actually have a faith-based economy. Let me put it that way,
Monetary
right?
system, yeah.
Yeah, because we
Yeah, that
have to
makes sense.
believe that it works. And that's why the credit score is. That's just like a reflection of a quantification of the belief in the American economy. That's what that is. So as soon as we stop spending, as soon as we stop, we think that there's going to be a downturn, then there is. It's wild to think about, but that's why we saw also during COVID and during the economic crash in 2010 such high levels of government intervention because if you have the belief that the economy is functioning bottom out, right, then catastrophic. So you actually have to keep people believing that it's going to work.
Definitely. Yeah, it makes sense, and I'm always a guy that's willing to try something once for sure.
I say we just
We
try the coin. Just do it.
Yeah, we try it once and see if it works, and once we get it back to where it belongs, and then, hey, maybe something else comes along and we have to do it again one time. But, yeah, that seems to be a lot of had a thought while you were talking. There seems to be a lot of the again, it's a lot of the Republican, "This will never work" type thing. Let's just try it. What's the harm in it? You know?
You're
How much money flows through the economy every single day that we couldn't fix one big problem a day or something like that? So, definitely, it's worth giving it a shot for sure.
yeah, hashtag
Just
mint the
like I think,
coin.
yeah, just like I think even if we tried universal basic income for a little bit and see if that works. If it doesn't work, hey, we could take it back. We
Sure.
try universal basic healthcare or something.
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah,
Oh, good. Okay. So I think we got our fill on the debt ceiling. Is there anything else you want to add?
not the debt ceiling, no.
Good. So I think that we are probably at the upper limit of what we wanted to target for this show because I
Mhm.
was very excited to be able you wanted to talk about the coin. Oh man, that'll get me going. So good. So any like final thoughts for our first episode here today?
Not really. I mean, I think we're going to set up an email for this show, a Universal Basic Podcast email. Once we get that set up, we'll just let people know where they can email their comments or questions or anything. And when we revisit this topic next year, then we can have all those to look through and talk about what people actually want to talk about. If you're local to Fort Myers, I got tons of shows coming up. I'm on Facebook. Come find me at a show and support a local comedian, like I try to say all the time.
Awesome.
And congratulations to you, Dr. Cindy Banyai. I heard you just got married.
I did. Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Yes,
Thank you. It was
that's awesome
wonderful.
news.
Yeah. So I was
Um,
gonna say you will be able to see us at our social media on Big Mouth Media. So you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And
uh,
this episode will be fully available in video on the or at bigmouthmediafl.com. And we are going to be doing this every other week. So you can expect that. And we have subscriptions ready for that. So subscriptions for this show start off at $2.99 a month. So we'd love for you to support independent media and become an early subscriber to Universal Basic Podcast. You get the whole year for $29.99. And that will help working class folks like Chris and I put some money in our bank account to keep things going for us. You can actually get subscription to all of the podcasts and videos, and that's the full length videos from everything that Big Mouth Media has to offer for a 199.99 a year or 19.99 a month. We would love to have your support on that. And then you get my daily podcast, Dr. Cindy Speaks. You get Misinformational with Rebecca Jones. You'll get Juice Fresh Talk with Chantel Rhodes and I, and all of the other new ones that we have coming on. So we would love for you to be able to support us that way. And of course, we can join in the conversation when we post these on any of our social media platforms as well, or contact us directly at info@bigmouthmediafl.com. So thank you so much. Wonderful. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Cindy.
How you feeling? Good?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yep,
We did it. All right. Amazing. We'll see everybody next time. Bye-bye.
definitely. Bye bye.